The rain poured down in relentless sheets, turning the bustling city streets into rivers of shimmering reflections. Cars honked impatiently, tires splashing murky water onto the sidewalks where drenched pedestrians hurried along, clutching umbrellas that did little to shield them from the storm's wrath. Through the haze of rain, the small diner stood like a forgotten relic, its flickering neon sign valiantly declaring it was still open. It was the sort of place most wealthy men would drive past without a second thought. But tonight, Ethan Caldwell wasn't like most wealthy men. He was a father desperate to cheer up his son, to offer some small joy in a life overshadowed by constant struggle. Ethan's sleek black SUV rolled into the diner's narrow parking lot, its engine purring to a stop. He glanced into the rearview mirror where his son, Oliver, sat strapped in the backseat. Oliver's curly brown hair was slightly tousled from the drive, his eyes distant and weary. At 10 years old, Oliver was bright, curious, and imaginative, but his body often refused to cooperate, a cruel reality inflicted by cerebral palsy. "All right, buddy. How about pancakes?" Ethan asked, forcing a smile despite the heaviness clinging to his chest. Oliver's lips twitched into a faint grin, the spark of excitement cutting through his usual fatigue. "Pancakes, with extra syrup." His voice was small but determined. Ethan chuckled, nodding as he unbuckled his seatbelt and reached back to help Oliver. Even as a billionaire who could afford the most luxurious of lifestyles, nothing made him feel more helpless than the moments when he had to lift his son from the car, Oliver's limbs limp and unresponsive. It was a painful reminder that wealth couldn't solve everything. Cradling Oliver in his arms, Ethan shielded him from the rain as best as he could. His tailored suit soaked through within seconds, but he didn't care. Tonight was about his son, not business deals or quarterly reports or the expectations that came with being one of the wealthiest men in the city. Just Oliver. Pushing through the diner's creaky door, Ethan was met with the smell of frying bacon, warm coffee, and something sugary baking in the kitchen. The place was nearly empty, save for a couple of truckers nursing their mugs and a waitress who was scribbling down an order with a pen that looked like it had been chewed on one too many times. "Welcome in," she called out, her voice bright and friendly, despite the late hour. "Sit anywhere you like." Ethan nodded, making his way toward a booth by the window. He gently set Oliver down, adjusting the boy's seat so he was comfortable. The rain hammered against the glass beside them, a dull roar in the otherwise quiet room. "Be right with you," the waitress said, her sneakers squeaking on the tile floor as she hurried to drop off a couple of plates at the trucker's table. Ethan's attention turned to Oliver, who was staring out the window, his fingers twitching restlessly against the laminated menu. His son's frustration was evident, though Oliver rarely complained. It was one of the things Ethan admired most about him. The quiet strength and resilience of a boy who faced a world designed for bodies that worked like they were supposed to. "What do you think, buddy? Pancakes still sound good?" Ethan asked, his voice softer now. Oliver nodded eagerly, his smile breaking through the clouds of exhaustion. "Yeah, and chocolate milk." Ethan laughed, the sound genuine for the first time all day. "Chocolate milk it is." The waitress approached their table, her eyes quickly assessing the situation. Her name tag read Maya, and she looked to be in her late 20s, with curly black hair pulled into a loose bun and tired eyes that somehow still held a spark of kindness. "Hey there," she said with a warm smile. "What can I get you guys tonight?" "2 orders of pancakes, please. Extra syrup on one of them. And, chocolate milk for him. Coffee for me," Ethan replied. "You got it. Coming right up." Maya scribbled the order down and offered Oliver a wink before heading toward the kitchen. Ethan glanced around the diner, the rain's persistent rhythm making the place feel like a safe, cocooned world. He wished he could keep Oliver there, away from the harshness of reality. But the world always found its way back in. The moments stretched on, and Ethan found himself lost in thought, wondering if he was doing enough, if there was something, anything, that could make life easier for Oliver. His money had provided the best doctors, the finest therapists, the most sophisticated equipment. And yet, the one thing he couldn't buy was a cure. "Sir," Maya's voice broke through his thoughts. "Sorry to bother you, but could I ask something?" Ethan blinked, nodding slowly. Sure. What is it?" "It's just the little guy. He's having trouble sitting up, isn't he?" Maya asked gently, her eyes focused on Oliver with a tenderness Ethan rarely saw in strangers. "Yeah, he has cerebral palsy. It makes a lot of things difficult," Ethan admitted, the words feeling heavy on his tongue. Maya nodded with understanding rather than pity. "I've got an idea. Just give me a minute." Before Ethan could respond, she walked away, her steps purposeful. He watched, curious and slightly wary. Most people avoided engaging with Oliver's condition, either out of discomfort or misguided sympathy. But Maya seemed genuinely interested. A few minutes later, she returned with a pillow and placed it carefully behind Oliver, adjusting his posture so he could sit more comfortably. "Better?" she asked, her voice kind. Oliver nodded, his eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Yeah, thank you." Maya's smile widened. "No problem at all. You just let me know if you need anything else, okay?" Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. It wasn't the gesture itself, though it was undoubtedly thoughtful. It was the way Maya had treated Oliver, with dignity and warmth, not as someone to be pitied or ignored, but as a person deserving of kindness. "Thank you," Ethan said, his voice thick with sincerity. "Anytime," Maya replied, her eyes lingering on Oliver for a moment before she returned to the kitchen. Ethan watched her go, a strange sense of gratitude blooming in his chest. For the first time in a long while, someone had seen Oliver the way he saw him. Strong, brave, and deserving of kindness. And for reasons Ethan couldn't quite grasp, that simple act of compassion stirred something deep within him. Little did he know, it was a moment that would change their lives forever. The pancakes arrived steaming hot, golden brown, and perfectly stacked with a generous drizzle of syrup glistening over the edges. Maya placed the plates down with the careful precision of someone who cared about getting things just right. Oliver's eyes widened with excitement, his lips parting in a delighted smile that made Ethan's heart swell. "And here's your chocolate milk. Extra chocolatey, just the way I liked it when I was your age," Maya said with a playful wink as she set down the glass. "Thank you," Oliver replied shyly, his fingers twitching as he attempted to grab his fork. Ethan reached over to help, but before he could, Maya's hand gently touched his arm. "If you don't mind, I'd like to help him. My little brother used to have trouble eating on his own, and I found some tricks that made it easier for him." Ethan hesitated, curiosity mingling with skepticism. People often tried to offer advice without really understanding Oliver's challenges. But there was something in Maya's voice, a gentleness tempered with genuine experience. "Sure, if Oliver's okay with it," Ethan said, his eyes flicking to his son. Oliver nodded, his gaze locked on Maya, with an expression that was equal parts fascination and hope. Maya pulled up a chair and sat beside Oliver, her tone easy and encouraging. "Here's the secret. We make it a game. You and me, we're on a pancake treasure hunt. You ready?" Oliver giggled, the sound a rare melody that Ethan cherished more than all the wealth in the world. "Yeah. All right, treasure hunter. Let's go." Maya slid the fork into Oliver's hand, positioning his fingers with careful guidance. "Now we're looking for the syrupy treasure buried beneath the golden hills. I'll be your assistant, but you're the leader. You call the shots." Oliver's grip tightened around the fork, his brow creasing with concentration. Slowly, clumsily, but determinedly, he managed to spear a piece of pancake and guide it toward his mouth. His face lit up with triumphant glee as he chewed, syrup smudging the corner of his lips. Ethan watched, captivated by the ease with which Maya connected with his son. She made it seem so natural, like she'd been part of their lives all along. Another piece, Captain Oliver? Maya asked, her voice radiating warmth and encouragement. Yes, Oliver responded eagerly, his excitement building with every bite. He managed to take on his own. Maya continued the playful banter, her patience endless, her laughter infectious. Ethan found himself smiling more than he had in weeks. The storm outside raged on, but within the small confines of the diner, everything felt calm. Safe. By the time Oliver finished his pancakes, his energy was noticeably fading, but the happiness on his face remained undiminished. Ethan reached over with a napkin, gently wiping the syrup from his son's cheek. "Looks like you conquered the pancake mountain, buddy," Ethan said with a chuckle. "Best pancakes ever." Oliver's words were punctuated by a yawn, his eyelids growing heavy. "I think someone's ready to call it a night," Ethan murmured, glancing at Maya with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you. I mean it. You didn't have to do any of that." "It was my pleasure," Maya replied softly. "Oliver's an amazing kid. And, well, sometimes kindness is the only thing we can really give, you know." Ethan nodded slowly, her words echoing in his mind. As someone who had built an empire by understanding people, by negotiating deals and closing agreements worth millions, this simple, unpretentious act of compassion felt more valuable than anything money could buy. Maya started to get up, but then paused. "Wait here a second. I got something." Ethan watched her retreat to the counter and dig through her bag before returning with a small, intricately folded paper crane. She placed it gently in front of Oliver, who eyed it with sleepy curiosity. "My brother used to love these. Said they were good luck," Maya explained. "I thought Oliver might like one too." Oliver picked up the paper crane, his fingers clumsy but careful. "It's cool. Thank you." "You're welcome, kiddo. Now you take care, all right." Maya gave him a gentle smile before turning her gaze toward Ethan. "And you too. Both of you." Ethan cleared his throat, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You've been incredibly kind. You didn't have to go out of your way like that." "I didn't have to," Maya agreed. "But sometimes it's about what you choose to do, not what you have to do." The words stayed with Ethan as he gently lifted Oliver into his arms, the boy's head already nodding off against his shoulder. As he carried his son toward the exit, he glanced back at Maya, who was wiping down the counter with her usual diligence, her attention already focused on the next task. Ethan stepped out into the rain, his mind spinning with thoughts. Maya was just a waitress, someone whose kindness came without expectation, whose sincerity wasn't tied to wealth or power or influence. And yet, she had given Oliver something Ethan hadn't been able to give him in a long time. A genuine moment of joy. The ride home was quiet, Oliver drifting into a deep, peaceful sleep in the backseat. Ethan drove with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. When he finally reached their gated estate, he carried Oliver to his room and gently tucked him into bed, his son's fingers still clutching the paper crane even in his dreams. Ethan watched him sleep for a long time, his mind replaying the evening's events over and over. The way Oliver had laughed, the way he had eaten without frustration, just pure, unfiltered joy. Maya's kindness had been so simple, so powerful, and for the first time in years, Ethan found himself questioning everything. The way he lived his life, the way he measured success. The billions he had amassed suddenly seemed hollow compared to the laughter of his son and the kindness of a stranger who expected nothing in return. What if he could do something more, something that truly mattered? The question settled deep within him, a seed of possibility waiting to grow. The following morning, Ethan woke up with a strange heaviness in his chest. It wasn't the usual stress of corporate meetings or billion-dollar deals. This was different. Something had shifted within him during that brief encounter with Maya. As he made his way down the wide, marbled staircase of his mansion, his thoughts drifted back to her words. He found Oliver already awake, seated in front of the television with cartoons flickering on the screen. But instead of watching them, His son was fixated on the small paper crane clutched gently in his hands. "You really like that, huh?" Ethan asked, his voice softer than usual. Oliver nodded eagerly. "It's good luck. Maya said so." Ethan's chest tightened. That woman had done something he hadn't managed to do in months. Bring pure joy to his child's life. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said carefully. "Would you like to go back to that diner sometime?" Oliver's face lit up, the brightness of his smile enough to melt Ethan's heart. "Yes. Can we go tonight?" Ethan chuckled. "We'll see. Maybe." His day passed in a blur of conference calls, business reports, and boardroom negotiations. But for once, his focus was fractured, his attention drifting back to Oliver's smile and Maya's words. By the time the evening rolled around, Ethan couldn't resist. "All right, Oliver," he said, poking his head into his son's room. "How about some more pancakes?" The ride to the diner was filled with animated chatter from Oliver about his paper crane and how it was totally magical. Ethan found himself laughing along, his usual sternness replaced by genuine delight. When they walked into the diner, Ethan's eyes immediately searched for Maya. He spotted her at the far end of the counter, scribbling something on a notepad while chatting with another customer. Her smile was the same, radiant, kind, and effortlessly warm. Maya noticed them moments later and made her way over, her eyes twinkling with recognition. "Back again so soon? You must be here for the pancakes." "Definitely." Oliver piped up, beaming at her. Ethan offered a polite nod. "And maybe a little good luck too." Maya chuckled. "Well, I think you two have plenty of that already, but I'll see what I can do." They settled into their booth, and before Ethan could place an order, Maya had already brought over Oliver's chocolate milk, the extra chocolatey kind he loved. "You remembered," Ethan remarked, genuinely surprised. "I try to remember the things that matter," Maya replied simply. Ethan found himself studying her, noticing the faint dark circles under her eyes, the wariness she tried so hard to hide beneath that ever-present smile. He couldn't quite place why, but it bothered him. As they ate, Maya once again guided Oliver through the pancake treasure hunt game, her encouragement drawing more laughter from him than Ethan had heard in months. She was patient, genuine, and never once made Oliver feel inadequate or pitied. After Oliver finished his meal and started to doze off in the booth, Ethan cleared his throat. "Maya, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What's your story?" The question was blunt, and Ethan almost regretted it, but he needed to understand her. Why she was so kind, why she cared so much. Maya hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands as she twisted a napkin between her fingers. "Not much to tell, really. I grew up around here, took care of my little brother after our parents died. He had cerebral palsy too. That's why I knew how to help Oliver. Unfortunately, my brother didn't make it past 16. Her voice was steady, but the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. Ethan felt his throat tighten, sympathy and admiration mingling within him. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. Maya forced a small smile. "It's all right. You learn to live with it. And you try to do better. Make the world a little kinder where you can." Those words struck Ethan with the force of a tidal wave. Here was someone who had suffered unimaginable loss, and yet she chose kindness over bitterness. It made him question everything he had built his life around. His empire was about power, control, wealth. But Maya's quiet strength came from something else entirely. They continued talking, the conversation flowing naturally despite the tragic revelations. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was speaking to someone who truly understood the struggle of trying to do right by someone you love. As they prepared to leave, Ethan slipped a few $100 bills into the check holder. But when Maya saw it, her expression grew stern. "I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept that." Ethan blinked, baffled. "Why not? You've gone above and beyond for Oliver. You deserve it." Maya shook her head. "Kindness isn't a transaction, Ethan. It's a choice. And I chose to help Oliver because I wanted to, not because I expected a reward." Her words left him speechless. The idea that someone could act so selflessly was foreign to him, a concept he couldn't quite grasp. As he carried a now sleeping Oliver out of the diner, Ethan's mind raced. The following week, they visited the diner almost every night. Maya's warmth and kindness never wavered, and Oliver's attachment to her only grew stronger. Each evening, Ethan learned a little more about the waitress who had become so important to his son, and to his own surprise, to himself. But kindness wasn't the only thing Ethan noticed. He saw the strain in Maya's shoulders, the exhaustion in her eyes. She was overworked, stretched thin, trying to make ends meet in a world that seemed to give her nothing but hardship. As Ethan drove home one night, his thoughts swirled with an idea, one that could change everything. Maya had given his son a gift that money couldn't buy. Now it was his turn to repay that kindness, not out of obligation or guilt, but because he truly wanted to. Days turned into weeks, and the visits to the diner became a cherished routine for both Ethan and Oliver. It was their safe haven, a place untainted by wealth or status, where a simple waitress held the power to heal wounds money never could. The warmth in Oliver's laughter and the sparkle in his eyes grew brighter each time they walked through those glass doors, and Ethan found himself drawn not only to the comfort Maya provided for his son, but to the quiet strength she radiated. Maya's world, however, was far less tranquil. The grueling hours she put into the diner were only part of her struggles. She lived in a cramped, run-down apartment on the outskirts of the city. The leaky faucet, creaky floors, and unreliable heating system were constant reminders of how far she was from the life she dreamed of. Yet, she endured it all with resilience. It wasn't wealth or luxury she sought, just enough to get by, to live with a shred of dignity. Ethan began noticing the signs, the exhaustion that dulled her usually vibrant eyes, the wince of pain as she carried heavy trays, even though she tried to hide it, the stiffness in her movements from standing too long during double shifts. And yet, Maya never let her struggles tarnish her kindness. She still gave Oliver her undivided attention every time they visited, her patience unwavering as she helped him tackle each new pancake treasure hunt. One particularly chilly evening, Ethan and Oliver arrived at the diner only to find Maya missing from her usual spot. Her absence was like a shadow cast over the entire establishment. The other waitresses were polite but distant, their attention divided between customers and whispered conversations about the overwhelming workload now that Maya was out. "She's sick," one of them admitted when Ethan finally asked. "Been pushing herself too hard. Not sure when she'll be back." The news left Ethan with an uncomfortable ache in his chest. He and Oliver finished their meal in silence, the empty space where Maya should have been a constant reminder of her absence. As they walked back to the car, Oliver clutched his paper crane with a solemnity Ethan hadn't seen before. "Do you think Maya will be okay?" Oliver asked, his voice trembling. "I hope so, buddy." Ethan's voice was thick. "I really do." That night, Ethan's restlessness kept him awake. His mind reeled with thoughts of Maya struggling alone in her tiny apartment, trying to recover with no one to look after her. The more he dwelled on it, the more frustrated he became with himself. How could he, one of the wealthiest men in the city, feel so helpless when it came to the woman who had done so much for his son? He made a decision. The next morning, Ethan picked up the phone and made several calls. By the afternoon, he was standing outside Maya's apartment building, a modest structure in desperate need of repairs. His knock echoed through the narrow hallway, and after a few moments, the door creaked open. Maya stood there, her face pale and drawn, wrapped in a faded, oversized sweater. The surprise in her eyes quickly shifted to confusion. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Checking up on you," he replied, his gaze raking over her frail appearance. "You weren't at the diner, and Oliver was worried." Maya's eyes softened. "Tell him I'm fine. Just caught a bug, that's all." "Doesn't look like just a bug to me." Ethan's tone was firm. You're exhausted, Maya. When was the last time you actually took a break? She hesitated, her expression turning defensive. I don't really have that luxury. Sick days mean no pay. And no pay means, well, you can probably guess the rest. Ethan felt his fists clench, the injustice of it all. Someone so good, so kind, forced to scrape by on nothing. It was infuriating. Why do you put yourself through this? He asked, his voice thick with frustration. Why not find something better? Something that gives you a fair chance. Maya's gaze hardened, the steel in her eyes something Ethan hadn't expected. Because this is my reality, Ethan. Not everyone gets the luxury of choosing their dreams. Sometimes, you just have to survive. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. It was a perspective he'd never considered, sheltered as he was by wealth and privilege. But more than that, her words only deepened his admiration for her. Well, that needs to change, he said resolutely. You shouldn't have to keep living like this. And what do you suggest? She replied, her voice laced with skepticism. That you just throw money at me and hope it fixes everything. No, Ethan said, his eyes locking onto hers. But maybe I can help make things a little easier. Let me get you the care you need. At least until you're back on your feet. No strings attached. Maya stared at him, her expression unreadable. Why are you doing this? Because you've done more for Oliver than you'll ever know. And because I want to help. Genuinely. Not as some business deal, but because it's the right thing to do. Silence stretched between them. Ethan held his breath, uncertain if Maya would accept his offer or slam the door in his face. But then her shoulders sagged, the exhaustion finally breaking through her stubborn pride. All right, she whispered. But only because I don't want to scare Oliver by disappearing on him. Ethan nodded, relief flooding through him. Thank you. He wasted no time arranging for a private doctor to visit Maya's apartment. The physician's diagnosis confirmed what Ethan had feared, severe exhaustion coupled with a lingering infection that needed proper rest and medication. Ethan made sure she had everything she needed, from food deliveries to round-the-clock care. Maya was reluctant to accept so much help, but as the days passed, her health slowly began to improve. She still resisted Ethan's attempts to do more, but there was a grudging respect between them now. One evening, as Ethan sat beside Maya's bed discussing everything from Oliver's latest antics to her dreams of becoming an art therapist, something shifted between them. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal, peeling away the layers of their guarded hearts. And for the first time in his life, Ethan felt something he couldn't quite describe. A longing, a need to be more than just the man who fixed problems with money. Maya's recovery took time, but under Ethan's relentless care and encouragement, she gradually regained her strength. The color returned to her cheeks, her movements became smoother, and the exhaustion that had weighed her down like chains finally began to fade. The days blurred into nights filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and moments of unexpected closeness. Ethan found himself looking forward to their talks more than he cared to admit. For the first time in years, Maya allowed herself to dream. She spoke of her desire to work with children, using art to help them heal from trauma and find their voice. The way her eyes lit up when she shared her dreams was mesmerizing. And Ethan found himself wanting to be part of that journey, not out of guilt or obligation, but because her passion was contagious. But not everyone was thrilled with Ethan's growing attachment to Maya. His business partners raised eyebrows at his increasing absences from meetings. His assistants whispered about the man who had once been all about profit margins and expansion, now dedicating his time to a woman who couldn't possibly offer him anything of value. At least, not in their eyes. The harshest critic of all was Ethan's mother, Charlotte Caldwell, a woman whose elegance was matched only by her ruthless ambition. Her disapproval came swiftly and sharply. "What are you thinking, Ethan?" she demanded one evening during a tense dinner at her estate. "You're spending all your time doting on some waitress like she's some project. Do you realize how this looks?" "This isn't about how it looks," Ethan replied, his patience fraying. It's about doing something good for once. It's about helping someone who actually deserves it. Deserves it. Charlotte's tone dripped with disdain. And what exactly has she done to earn your charity? She's been kind to Oliver when no one else was, Ethan shot back. She made him smile when I couldn't. That's worth more than anything money could buy. Charlotte's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a chilling calmness. You're making a mistake. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. Remember who you are, Ethan. You're a Caldwell. Our name carries weight, responsibility. And you're throwing it away over some. Don't. Ethan interrupted, his voice a low growl. Don't talk about her like that. She's more genuine, more compassionate, and more deserving of respect than most of the people I've ever met, including myself. His mother's silence was thick and cold, her gaze hardening like ice. Ethan knew he had crossed a line, but he no longer cared. If protecting Maya's dignity meant defying his family's expectations, then so be it. Their strained conversation replayed in his mind as he drove to Maya's apartment later that night. But the moment he saw her, all the bitterness and frustration melted away. She was standing by the small window, her eyes lost in the city lights as if searching for answers in the glowing skyline. You look like you've had a rough day, Maya said softly when Ethan walked in. More like a rough life, he admitted with a weak smile. But seeing you makes it all worth it. The tenderness in his voice caught Maya off guard. She looked at him, truly looked at him, as if seeing beyond the tailored suit and expensive watch. You know, I've been meaning to ask. Maya began, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. Why are you doing all of this, Ethan? I mean, really, it can't just be about Oliver anymore. Ethan hesitated. The truth was tangled in emotions he hadn't fully come to terms with. It started that way, but it's more than that now. You've shown me what kindness looks like, what it means to give without expecting anything in return. You've made me realize just how shallow my life has been. And for once, I want to do something meaningful, something real. Maya's eyes shimmered with uncertainty. Ethan, I appreciate everything you've done for me. But I'm not your charity case. I'm just me, a woman trying to survive in a world that isn't always kind. That's exactly why I admire you so much, Ethan replied, his voice barely more than a whisper. You've managed to keep your kindness, your integrity, despite everything life has thrown at you, and that's something I can't ignore. They stood there in silence, the truth of his words settling between them. But even as the bond between them deepened, Maya's insecurities gnawed at her. She was afraid to let herself believe that someone like Ethan could genuinely care for her. Over the next few weeks, Ethan continued to support Maya's recovery, but he also began encouraging her to pursue her dreams. He helped her find resources, contacts, and opportunities to start her journey toward becoming an art therapist. The walls she had built around herself began to crumble, piece by piece. One evening, as they sat on her worn-out couch, Oliver's laughter echoing from the makeshift art corner Maya had set up for him, Ethan finally allowed himself to acknowledge what had been growing inside him all along. I'm not just here because I feel grateful for what you did for Oliver, Ethan confessed, his voice steady. I'm here because I care about you, Maya, more than I thought possible. Maya's breath caught. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything in return, he continued. I just needed you to know how much you've changed me, how much you matter to me. Maya looked away, her hands trembling slightly. The world she had grown so accustomed to, a world of struggle and solitude, was being shattered by the sincerity in Ethan's words. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, letting someone in, trusting that this is real. It's terrifying. I know, Ethan said gently, but I'm willing to be patient, as long as it takes. Maya's gaze met his, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than the world had ever led her to believe. The weeks that followed were transformative in ways neither Ethan nor Maya could have predicted. As Maya's strength returned, her dreams grew bolder. She poured herself into her art, creating pieces that spoke of pain and healing, struggle and triumph. With Ethan's encouragement, she began sharing her work online, her art quickly gaining attention for its raw emotion and powerful storytelling. But more importantly, Maya began teaching art therapy workshops at community centers and rehabilitation clinics. Her passion for helping others guided her, her gentle patience and understanding making her a natural mentor. Ethan was there for her every step of the way, watching in awe as Maya's confidence blossomed. Yet, for all the progress they made, doubts continued to plague Maya's heart. The idea of someone like Ethan, a billionaire with a life of luxury and privilege, truly caring for her seemed impossible. She feared it was all a beautiful dream, one that could shatter at any moment. Ethan sensed her hesitation. Despite the smiles and laughter they shared, he saw the guarded look in her eyes, the way her voice tightened whenever they spoke about the future. His affection for her had grown into something undeniable, but he knew he had to be patient. Rushing her would only make her retreat. One evening, as they sat on the terrace of Ethan's penthouse overlooking the city, Maya's gaze drifted over the shimmering skyline, her expression thoughtful. Oliver was asleep in one of the guest rooms, exhausted from a day spent painting with Maya. "It's all so overwhelming," Maya admitted, her voice low. "The workshops, the attention my art is getting. It's like I'm living someone else's life." "No," Ethan corrected gently. "You're finally living your own life, the one you deserve." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to decipher a complicated puzzle. "You keep saying that, but I still don't understand why you're doing all of this. I know you say it's not charity, but..." "It's not," Ethan replied firmly. "It's me trying to be a better man. You've shown me a world I was blind to, Maya. One where kindness and compassion matter more than wealth and status. You made me realize how hollow my life had been before I met you." Maya's shoulders slumped, her gaze dropping to her hands. "But I'm still broken. I can barely make ends meet on my own. And even now, I'm still recovering. How could someone like you ever..." "Stop," Ethan interrupted, his voice trembling with emotion. "You are not broken. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you don't need to prove your worth to anyone, least of all me." Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair as if grounding herself. I don't know how to let someone care for me. I've always been the one taking care of others. It's all I've ever known." "Maybe it's time you let someone take care of you for a change," Ethan whispered. "And not just because you helped Oliver. Not just because you've shown me kindness and courage, but because I care about you, Maya. Deeply." Maya stared at him, her chest tightening with emotion. The sincerity in Ethan's words left her breathless. But just as she was about to speak, her phone rang, breaking the moment like shattering glass. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was an unknown number, but something told her this call wasn't one she could ignore. She answered hesitantly. "Hello. Is this Maya Carter?" An unfamiliar voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Dr. Bennett from Street Marks Rehabilitation Center. We came across some of your online work and the workshops you've been conducting. I have to say, we're impressed. We're looking to launch a pilot program focused on art therapy for our patients, and we'd like to offer you a position leading the initiative." Maya's heart leaped into her throat. You want me to work at Street Marks, the most prestigious rehabilitation center in the city?" "That's right. Your approach to using art as a healing tool is groundbreaking. We'd love for you to be part of our team. If you're interested, of course." Maya's voice trembled as she responded. "Yes, I'm interested. Absolutely." They discussed details, and by the time she hung up, her hands were shaking. Ethan, who had been watching her with concern, leaned forward. "What happened?" I just got offered a job at Street Marks Rehabilitation Center," Maya whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "They want me to lead an art therapy program. This is everything I've ever dreamed of." Ethan's smile was pure joy. Maya, that's incredible. You deserve this more than anyone. But what if I fail? Maya asked, her voice cracking. What if I can't handle it? You won't fail, Ethan assured her. You're too passionate, too dedicated. And even if you stumble, I'll be here to help you get back up. You're not alone anymore. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe his words. The fear that had once ruled her heart began to loosen its grip. Ethan's unwavering support, Oliver's innocent trust, and the recognition of her talent were all pieces of a puzzle she had been too afraid to assemble. But now it all made sense. The kindness she had shown Oliver, the compassion she had shared with Ethan, it had all come full circle. And now she had the opportunity to change lives on a scale she had never dared to imagine. Taking Ethan's hand, she squeezed it tightly, her gaze steady and sure. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. I don't know where this journey will lead, but I'm ready to find out. Ethan's smile was soft and genuine. Wherever it leads, I'll be right there with you. Maya nodded, her fear finally replaced by something much stronger. Hope, and the belief that maybe, just maybe, she was destined for something greater than she had ever dared to dream.